sacrifice. It consumed the altar. It licked up all the water. It was like, boom! Now you see me, and now you don't. Because it was there, fire came down from heaven, and nothing was left. He said, you take those rascals, and they executed all the prophets of Baal. All of them were killed. Now this takes place, and the king Ahab's wife, Jezebel, was none too happy about this. So as soon as she hears about that, she says, okay, you are a dead man, Elijah. And then he freaks out. Now he just beat 850 prophets to one, and one woman cries out and he gets upset. I don't know why, but they just have that power over men, I suppose. But he ran for his life. He ran for his life. And then this is when he makes a statement. Lord, they had killed your prophets, torn down your altars, and I alone am left, and they seek my life. So he's crying out to God and says, God, listen, I did what you told me to do. I did exactly what you said, and there's none left except me, and they want to kill me too. Then you will have no people left at all. God said, oh, just a minute. Just a minute, Elijah. I think you know what you're talking about, but you have no idea. You might be a prophet, but in this area you're clueless. You think you're the only one left? You're sadly mistaken. Look what it says in verse 4. Because God always has a remnant, always. Here's what verse 4 says. But what does the divine response say to him? I've reserved for myself 7,000 men who've not bowed the knee to Baal. Elijah, you think you're the only one left, but I have 7,000 on standby. I know you think you're the only one, but that is not the case. I have thousands upon thousands who've not worshiped Baal. I have my remnant. You don't know who they are, but I do. It says, we have people that you have no idea of. You are not the only one left. I have 7,000 standing by. So Elijah had no clue. He thought it was down. Now she was killing the prophets of God. She was. Jezebel went out and started executing. And if you remember, Obadiah took and hid prophets in caves and had them hidden also that Elijah didn't know about. But beyond that, there were thousands of those that God knew. They were still his people. Because God always has a remnant. Whenever you think you're the last one, God says, no. I have my remnant. There will always be a remnant of God's people. Always be a remnant. Now, he gets to this. He says, I have reserved for myself 7,000 men who have not bowed their knee to Baal. And he goes to 11:5. Even so then, at this present time, there is a remnant according to election of grace. A remnant of what? A remnant of God's people he has not cast away. There's a remnant. There's a bunch of Jewish people who God has on standby. Just like he did in Elijah's days. I don't see any. He said, you don't have to see them. I know where they're at. I know where they're at. You don't need to know where they're at. But I have my remnant ready. What's interesting, as soon as the rapture takes place, as soon as the age of the Gentiles close, God has a remnant ready to evangelize the earth. They're ready. Says, who are they? So we don't need to know. God knows. And he knows when it's going to happen. And when it does, they will be called to the forefront. He says, God's not done with Israel. He's not done with them by a long shot. If God wanted to be done with Israel, he'd been done a long time ago. When he took them out of the land, he could have said, you're never coming back. That's it. But he didn't. Okay, 70 years captivity. 40 years wandering in the wilderness. Every time he could have reduced his people to nothing, he chose not to. He said, no, they're my people. I've called them. And he has a special covenant relationship with them. Right now, it's interfered with by the age of the Gentiles. It means the gospel is open to everybody. Anybody who wants it. Whoever hears the gospel can be saved, can be born again, can become a child of God. We're going to enter another dispensation. We're in a dispensation of grace. But understand, when the rapture, when that happens and everyone goes up, you enter another dispensation. It's the dispensation of wrath. Dispensation of wrath. What happens then? Well, God deals with his people Israel again, but he also pours out 21 different judgments in 7 years. And the Antichrist comes on the earth at that time also. And Matthew 24 tells us it's the worst time ever. It can't be any worse than this. From the foundation of the world, there'll never be another time as bad as this, as it is, nor will it ever be this bad. He says it's the peak of evil. When God pours all of his wrath out on the earth after he removes his children, after the church is removed, he pours out his wrath because he never punishes the righteous with the wicked. He never does. He removes the righteous, he punishes the wicked, and then at the same time, you have the Antichrist come and set up and rule on earth at the same time. He says, how can it get worse than this? Then God pours out his wrath on mankind and the Antichrist, who is the epitome of Satan, on the earth at the same time. He says, folks, can it get any worse than this? I said, no, it cannot. It's the worst time it will ever be. And you do not want to be here when that takes place. So I would accept Christ now and not take any chances. Then he goes a little bit further. Says, even so at this present time, don't think that there are no Jews left. None that believe in Christ. He said there are. There's always a remnant. According to grace, he has those reserved for his great name. Well, when will they come to the forefront? At the end of the age of Gentiles, you'll see a Jewish nation forefront again. You'll see that. And then when he finally comes back, even after 7 years tribulation, where does he operate from? He comes down to Jerusalem and rules from Zion for 1,000 years. Don't think God's done with Israel. He is not. He's on, right now, there's a pause, the age of Gentiles. There will be full-blown Israel again. That's where it'll take place. So, and he says it's by the election of grace. And if by grace, it is no longer of works. Otherwise, grace is no longer grace. But if as works, it is no longer grace. Otherwise, work is no longer work. He says, that sounds like a bunch of double talk, Paul. He said, no, let me explain this to you. He said, the election of grace, what is that? That's your unmerited favor. You get to receive Christ. You didn't earn it. You didn't deserve it. You couldn't do anything for it. You received a free gift. You received it. He said, now, if we're in this age, if it's by grace, then it's not by works. So what that means? It means you can't earn God's favor. You can't earn it. You don't deserve it. You can't do enough for good works. There's no way you can earn God's forgiveness for your sins. You just can't do it. And he says, if you try, if it's by works, it's no longer grace. It's by human effort. It's either by grace or it's by works. It cannot be by both. Anytime you add any work to grace, he says it's no longer grace. It's you either received a free gift that Jesus Christ provided for you, or you try to earn it, but the minute you try to earn it, you've lost it. Because it's no longer grace. And you can't earn his favor. It just can't be done. So, it's either by grace or it's of works. But if it's by works, it's not grace. So it just can't be both ways. He goes to verse 7. What then? Israel has not obtained what it seeks, but the elect have attained it, and the rest were blinded. Those who've responded to the gospel, the elect, have attained grace. What about the nation of Israel? They were blinded. They couldn't see clearly. They couldn't see the Messiah, even though he was right in front of them. It says their minds were blinded. Why? For the benefit of the Gentiles. So that he knew they would reject him, blinded their minds, so that the whole world could have salvation. It was never just about Israel from the very beginning. It wasn't. Even the Abrahamic covenant, he will be a blessing to all nations, right? Everyone. Every nation will be blessed through Abraham. Everyone who ever believes the gospel would be blessed through Abraham. The message that's come by faith alone. And it was credited to Abraham as righteousness. And everyone who has been blessed through Abraham with the gospel, those would be the elect. They have obtained it. The rest were blinded. Either they saw it and they received it, or they couldn't see it. Now, I get to talk to a lot of people about Jesus Christ. I get to share the gospel in a lot of different settings. And you can tell when someone gets it and when someone doesn't. You can share the gospel with them, and all of a sudden you could see it click, or you can see this haze over their eyes, that they really don't understand what you're saying. The worst part is when they understand, they still don't want it. That's scary. I've only had that happen a couple times. I remember one was a family member. I was talking with this young girl, And I wanted to share Christ with her, and so I did. I went through the gospel with him. She said, I already know all that. I said, and you're not a believer? No. I said, you understand the gospel and you haven't received it? No. I said, why? She said, I want to live my life for me first. And then when I'm old, I'll accept Christ. So I said, when is your funeral? My what? I said, when is your funeral? I don't know. I said, that's right, you don't know. That's why you can't wait. You may not live till you're older. You don't know when your last day on earth is going to be. Why, if you knew the gospel, you understood that Jesus loved you and died for you and would forgive you if you came to him and asked for forgiveness, why would you put that off? She said, because she wanted to live her life for her first. And then when she's older, she would receive Christ. You have no guarantee you have one more day. You don't know when your last day on earth is going to be. She didn't know when her funeral was going to be. No one does. But why would you wait? It says, today is the day of salvation. Don't put it off. If you understand today, if you heard the gospel and you understand it, then today is the day you receive it. Don't wait. It's too big. It's an eternal decision. I wouldn't wait any longer. Now, Israel has not obtained it, what it seeks. The elect, those who receive Jesus Christ, have, and the rest were blinded. Let's look at verse 8, 11:8. Just as is written, God has given them a spirit of stupor, eyes that they should not see, and ears that should not hear to this very day. That comes out of Deuteronomy 29:4. It said this would happen. See, the Lord has not given you a heart to perceive and eyes to see and ears to hear to this very day. That's what you get out of Deuteronomy 9:4. It's a direct quote out of there. Even the Old Testament had the same problem. They heard, but they didn't listen. They saw it, they couldn't perceive it. Spiritually blind. We were talking about this earlier, and when we talk about it, everyone who is not a believer is really like a zombie. They're the living dead. They're moving, they're walking around, but spiritually they're dead, separated from Christ. And that's exactly what a zombie is, isn't it? The living dead. Those who are dead, who are walking around. Every single person who doesn't know Jesus Christ is a zombie. They're walking around, they're moving, but they are dead and they don't know it. Now, thank goodness don't eat our brains, that would hurt. But those who don't know Christ, although they're moving, they're eating, they're drinking, they're driving, they're working, they are dead. They're dead. Without Christ, they're spiritually dead, separated from Christ, and they have no hope. Look at Romans 11:9 and 10. And as David says, let their table become a snare and a trap, a stumbling block and a recompense to them. Let their eyes be darkened so they do not see, and bow down their backs always. This is once again out of Psalm 69, a messianic psalm talking about Jesus Christ, and it's referring to him. And David quotes this. He doesn't quote the first part of it, but I'm going to quote the first part of it in a minute so you understand that the messianic psalm is here. David is talking about this, that those who come against him, let their tables become a snare and a trap. Let them, when they go on to eat, they think they have a feast, let it be their end. A snare and a trap. You know what a snare and a trap is? When a fish bites a lure. That's what it is. It looks really good. And all of a sudden they bite it. Next thing you know, boop, they wish they didn't. But they don't know the difference. He said, let it be this way for them. Let their table, let their food be a snare and a trap, a stumbling block and a recompense to them. Let their eyes be darkened so they don't see. And let them bend their backs. Let them be enslaved. Now, this comes out of Psalm 69. I want to look a little bit earlier. If we look at Psalm 69, verse 20 and 21, you'll see the messianic reference here. Reproach has broken my heart, and I'm full of heaviness. I have looked for someone to take pity, but there was none. And for comforters, but I found none. They also gave me gall for my food, and for my thirst, they gave me vinegar to drink. That's what happened at the crucifixion. That's what happened when they were killing Christ. He says, they did this to me. Let their table become a snare and trap, a stumbling block for them. Let their eyes be darkened. And then he even called out to them, if you are the Son of God, come down, then we'll believe you. They didn't know who he was, although they should have. And some did and rejected him, and others were blinded to that fact. But when you see that put into it, the rest of Psalm 69, or the verses prior to that, and you see that, especially 21, they gave me gall for my food, and for my thirst they gave me vinegar to drink. They offered him drink 2 times. The gall is a medicated thing to take.